you've been discriminated against because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status, file a complaint with HUD. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
Visit HUD.gov/fairhousing, a public service message from HUD and the National Fair Housing Alliance.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Some people already chiming in over there, primarily on the Facebook page, because it's still more or less our main one. But however you're getting at to us, that's the right way for you to do it, and why we make it available. So good afternoon to you as well. Ida Beza Gardner chiming in with us here, as well as dropping those likes and react. Ida there as well as Monica Cervantes and Robbie Flores. A lot to get into here again today. Also, Steve Ivy, howdy to you as well. If you want to chime in again, that's one of the better ways to do so over throughout the show on the social media, because, well, it's always available. And the conversation often takes on its own tone and tenor. So if you really want to wade in there, more than welcome to. Otherwise, some of the things top of mind here today, some lower tax rates and maybe how not to promote them coming out of City Council as of this week. Also, some more discussion going on. UMC putting out its public outreach and explanations, well, what they're putting out anyway, when it comes to that potential expansion and that multi-$100 million certificate of obligation plan. Plus, of course, we'll be checking in with El Paso Inc. on some of their big reporting. May sound a little bit similar in some ways, but of course, always things moving whenever it comes to some of those issues we check in on a lot. Crane launch, industrial development changes, movements, and other things happening around the area, including what might be some of the weird bugs you're seeing in the area. So that coming up here a little bit later in the program as well. And always, as always, your phone calls a little bit later in the show here. So let's look at that city tax rate, because sure, as much as we are definitely in tax setting season, and even though some of this might take a little bit longer, but the amount that City Council, El Paso City Council, is now looking at for when it comes to your next year's taxes is going to be a bit lower. They are looking down to move it about 5.5 cents lower to about 86 cents per $100 in property valuation. And there's been some comments out there and some commentary on the comments and the op-eds that are getting written out there. And quoting directly from El Paso's Matters reporting on this, we believe this tax relief will help our taxpayer and continue our efforts to fully recover as a community, said City Manager Tommy Gonzalez in a release issued yesterday. And of course, there was the initial rate already being looked at after being lowered about 0.5% from 90 cents. So lower than it has been. But of course, that under that rate, there would have been at least a little bit more paid in taxes. Now, of course, this discussion and how we're setting the tax rate is more than a little bit of a contentious one. You may recall from last year when City Council technically did not raise their rates, but of course, in the background of all of this comes the fact that property values have increased by some reckonings. Let's call it, at least from people I'm hearing, I mean, your individual situation may vary wildly, because honestly, they have. I'm aware of some that it may have seen upwards of 50% over the last few years. Anyway, maybe not in any one year. We're still not Travis County, which did see that. But in any case, what we're looking at here in El Paso is that with a couple of years of, say, roughly 15%, I'm generally considering it about a 30% increasing in the base valuations of property across the Borderland region, primarily the city of El Paso, what we're talking about there. But seriously, there's been a lot of increasing in valuations. So the two ways, of course, that two of the major taxing entities in our region when it comes to the city of El Paso and then the county of El Paso dealt with it, well, tale of two different entities, because the city of El Paso kept their rates flat, meaning that since there was a valuation increase, that it did end up costing you more. You still paid more in taxes, even if the rate did not change. Now, of course, what the County of El Paso did a revenue neutral, no new revenue budget, which technically was a decrease in their rate, but still brought in the same amount of money into their coffers from the public amount of money that is raised on your taxes. So, City Council now looking at closer to a similar kind of thing. And again, that initially approved rates, the 1 to 90 cents per $100 evaluation, or it's going to be a raise about 16% on average here. So, them now moving to it, an interesting statements coming out of the city on this one. Specifically, a little bit after our show yesterday, I was sitting around the couch wrapping up the day and focusing on, looking at potential topics for today, and saw the release out from the city, posted on their social media and being shared by some of the currently existing city council members, and even some of those that are, hoping to become. The campaigning's already gone. In fact, as I was headed out the door here today, got a knock on the doorbell ringing, technically, if you want to be completely accurate, from one of the candidates looking to, particularly for City Council District 1, that we might be getting into here before too long. Once we get closer to the ballot being set is when we will really be delving into those elections. So no worries, we're already got our eyes on it. We'll be getting closer to it. But again, that statement from the city, and then again being shared by the current or prospective city council members, saying largest tax rate reduction in more than 35 years. And, I'm just going to, again, quote El Paso Matters directly on this one. Quote, that claim misleads the public because the revised rate doesn't translate into lower property tax bills. So, given the fact that, yes, the rate is lower, but then also it's not necessarily actually saving you any money, a little bit misleading, but also even beyond that, okay, that whole reason I like this format that we do here and the ability to truly describe and explain things that, yes, that previous approved rate of 90 cents per $100 valuation and now down to that 80 some odd cents here technically is a drop. And is a significant one when you look at it percentage-wise, again, about 5.5 cents. But the way that was being taken on social media was not good. I mean, some people are saying, yes, lower taxes, that's great. But when it comes to explaining some of the finer points of valuations, rates, and how taxes actually work, those ever so simple topics, let's just say depth of understanding is maybe not the total real strong point when it comes to social media, because there was more than a few people by the time I saw the announcement saying that you're dropping it a few cents. What does that mean to us? That sounds like you're still kind of screwing us over, among other things. And yeah, it was maybe not the right way to do it. If I had been in charge of that post and that release, at the very least when it comes to social media, it probably would have gone something a little bit more along the lines of this percentage drop. Because sure, again, technically down 4.5 cents, technically accurate, but to the average person who maybe isn't quite as informed or having studied what their taxes is, just grumbles at whenever they have to cut that check or look how much came out of their account every time around tax season and property tax season. Yeah, it didn't quite play as well as you might have liked. If you were in charge of it, that is. Otherwise, you may have enjoyed the response. Even John Hurt saying to, so glad I don't pay taxes to the city or to this county. I mean, you got to pay them somewhere if you're anywhere in the broadcast. Well, I guess technically if you're in Juarez, that doesn't count here. But if anyone's chiming in from Juarez, be very curious to know, actually, here. Marky Mandingo saying, love this community conference center, among other things. And some of that, yeah, the CAD and Steve Ivy commenting on the CAD there as well. It's an ongoing conversation, and whether or not this actually sticks in place or stays around or that rate remains unchanged any further remains to be seen. But yeah, tax season or tax setting season, the right way to put it, definitely in swing here. And we'll get into that a whole lot more. Of course, as we are in this week, we are on the cusp of the third anniversary of the August 3rd commemorations that are coming up. So we'll be talking a little bit about those events, plus some of the other movements and adjustments happening in around the city, particularly when it comes to the local economy. What does it actually look like? What are some of the factors we've been analyzing? All that and more coming up as we talk with El Paso Inc. And John Hurt saying a resident of El Paso and pays zero taxes. I hope that works out for you. All I got to say about that. Not that I say you're doing anything wrong, but just hope it works out for you. In any case, got to take that next break right now. Again, out of this break, going to be talking a little bit further, again, about some of those subjects we definitely check in on with El Paso Inc., or Robbie Gray, editor there, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. More of your comments, more discussion, and those things affecting us here in the Borderland after this break here with News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Checking your El Paso freeways, a crash on the I-10 eastbound at Red exit. There's still a 15-minute delay from Red back to before Trans Mountain. Gateway South at Paisano Drive, a semi is blocking the right shoulder there. Loop 375 Memorial Highway, Loop 375 northbound Memorial Highway at the 601 spur, a stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Country music star John Rich just released a new single called Progress, where he calls out woke ideology. Don't miss John Rich and don't miss The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday, every Thursday, and all throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Scott Curley, CEO and founder of KickIRS.com.
If you're getting letters from the IRS, call us immediately. The IRS is the only entity in the country that can seize assets without a court order. If you call us in time, then we know where they're at and we can intervene before anything damaging occurs.
So I called KickIRS.com and they were able to help me. I no longer have this huge tax debt. I am able to sleep better at night and I no longer stress about this. So thank you, KickIRS.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Call for your free tax relief consultation now at 800-420-7550. That's 800-420-7550.
If you don't deal with your IRS problem, then they're going to take your paycheck, they're going to drain your bank account, and they may even take your house. But that doesn't have to happen.
Get your free case evaluation now at 800-420-7550. 800-420-7550. That's 800-420-7550.
On a busy construction site, things can be misinterpreted. Bring in the bulldozer can sound a lot like,
building looks mediocre. Designs need a do-over.
Or even,
install a roller coaster? Okay.
Be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk, from the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, can we actually bring in the bulldozer?
Dick Morris says Donald Trump is running again. It's all in his new bestseller, The Return. Find out Trump's long-expected plan for 2024 and his coming big surprise. The Return says Trump might face 3 big threats, including Hillary Clinton. Still, Dick Morris says Trump can win. Newsmax says The Return is the book of the year. An Amazon #1 bestseller. Get Dick Morris's The Return or see the free offer and save $28. Go to thereturn911.com. That's thereturn911.com.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on, well, whichever really your platform of choice is. Maybe more places in the future, but that's where we've hung our hat for the time being here. A lot of discussion going on, some comments coming in as well, such as the merits, the qualifications, the considerations for taxation, ever so slightly one of those, just simple topics, right? Anyway, we're delving into that, but also talking further about some of the big stories happening in and around the Borderland. Are going to be checking in right now with El Paso Inc., joined here in studio now by Robbie Gray, editor of that outlet. So thank you very much for joining us here today.
Good to be here out of another triple-digit heat day.
Yes, very glad you're inside and out of that with us, even though we've been feeling, okay, I've been joking, we're like Houston. No, we're nowhere near Houston's humidity rate, but we're a lot closer than we have been, it feels like, anyway, over this good part of this season.
Yeah, sure does.
So some of those things going on a part of the season as well, not even just the tax rates high, but also some of the rates for, well, some of that industrial development. So we talked a little bit previous week, and you all have a story out this week out of the most recent edition of El Paso Inc. about that industrial growth and some of the factors that can be seen from it here, including, well, the headline of the article here, industrial real estate breaks more records, delving a little bit deeper even than we got into it about what exactly is going on with, what it costs to even have warehouse space at this point.
Sure, yeah, you could say the market for warehouses in El Paso is like the weather. It's hot.
Very, very much so, because
but it's worth pausing here for a minute before we get into some of the details to explain a little bit about why this matters. I mean, really, who cares? I mean, it's the industrial real estate market. I don't know if that directly impacts many of us, but in many ways it does, because it's one of the most significant industries here. Of course, in Juarez and El Paso is the trade and industry. And then also when we talk about these bottlenecks and we talk about the issues with the supply chain, which is causing, is a cause of some of this inflation and some of the issues with the economy.
Sure.
This is it. This is what we talk about when we're talking about the industrial real estate market and creating more space for these goods to travel and to be stored.
Yeah. So, again, as we're looking at those, maybe not totally reshoring, but nearshoring phenomenons that we see in the area, these continue. Both sides of the border are absolutely focused on, but even just on the El Paso side of things are pretty tight and getting pretty expensive and getting pretty well developed here at this point.
Well, vacancy rate, once again, in industrial real estate, so we're talking warehouses, that sort of stuff, is at, again, a historic low. It's near basically zero. There's almost no space. And what that means is competition for that scarce space is driving up the rents. So rents hit a record high in the second quarter in the industrial market of $7.35 per square foot. And then that competition also, and the increasing rents, then spurs investors to come in and build more space. And that is something that we're seeing, and that is a positive development for trade here and for the local economy.
So one thing that was brought up when we're on this similar subject recently is the idea that, sure, the fact that there's no vacancy here doesn't necessarily mean that the warehouses are by default full. What it means is that they are being occupied and being paid for. So, warehouse space, it's often easy to think of that as it's just a sunk cost and you got to pay for the building. But there are, particularly for, insulated or even uninsulated facilities, heating costs, cooling costs more often around here, maintenance fees. Like, it costs money to be having and maintaining and occupying a warehouse. So even if they're not totally full, like, sure, I know that there's an argument to be made there that it still doesn't have as much inventory in it. The fact that they are occupied is still significant when it comes to economic analysis of our region.
Yeah, and here are some of the impacts or some of the things that spurred here. There's been some big moves. There's been it spurred new investment. So we look at, for instance, Helen of Troy.
Right.
El Paso's only publicly traded company headquartered here at this point. They're considering putting up their El Paso facility, that headquarters you can see when you're driving on I-10 on the west side.
That iconic kind of weird angle building.
Sure,
there. Yeah.
They're considering putting that up for sale, and then they would lease back a smaller portion of that building. So that's one of, there's many factors that has, caused the company to do that. But one of those, for sure, is just the success of the industrial market right now. You could probably get a pretty good price for that. Another big move, there's outside investment firms that have been building and investing in property here, and investing in the El Paso market. So one of those is Stone Lake Capital Partners, an Austin-based real estate firm that next year will break ground on a new logistics park out in Far East El Paso.
And that's, I feel like it's the wings of the city and the county that have really been seeing this development. Either the picture that you got out there of that Stone Lake Capital Partners development in Far East, or the kind of farm of warehouses that can be seen once you approach the Spaghetti Bowl currently, or, well, frankly, on the other side of Loop 375 out towards, what we're now calling Northwest El Paso, that increasingly expanding area where previously, as we've interviewed there, already have Schneider Electric continuing development of their facility out there. So very much being focused on, I mean, the development continues apace here and throughout the area, even if there are some readjustments being made. Again, the Helen of Troy being an interesting kind of case study in what's happening there. But even then, some of these factors, or at least one that you all have in the story as well, and we discussed that continued development or this funding being secured for the development of a continued roadway out even into the Santa Teresa area, which people may not see as much unless they have cause to go out there, but is another serious, warehouse and industrial base in the area.
Sure, and all this activity, of course, you mentioned Schneider Electric. We mentioned, of course, the construction industry and all this. It creates jobs for El Paso. It's boosting the economy. So it is, we're looking at a possible recession, or we're looking at issues where people's paychecks are being eaten away by inflation, with interest rates going up. I mean, it isn't a positive picture. This is a bright spot.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, because you all have previously also had about, what will the regional economic forecast be like, including talking with, some previous guests in the show here, including the professors Tom Fullerton, specifically including the Border Region Modeling Project and some of their forecasts showing that there's a potential, particularly as we get into the later quarters of this year. But again, I mean, and of course, the national conversation going on with the view, what does recession even mean at this point, coming up, ironically enough. But still, looking at the factors and what we got here, it's not, I mean, the tea leaves are a little murky right now, because sure, we've got a lot of issues. There's still some, bare points in the shelves that come up. But again, with developments like these and the increased focus on this region for all this kind of thing, I'm not much of a betting person as it is, but I'm not quite sure which way to bet here, up or down.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to, paint too bright of a picture. A lot of folks are struggling with the way prices are.
Sure.
And such, but the industrial real estate market is one bright spot specifically for El Paso because of our proximity to Juarez, all the trade that comes through here. And as more and more of that trade can be loosened up and more space built, that's in general positive for the economy.
Of course, and you all also have your crane watch that continues to move forward as you all look at some of those projects being moved on and around, and particularly surprisingly, I guess a little bit to me, even though I've seen it, hadn't really considered it, a lot of, auto dealership construction going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to miss if you're driving on Airway or Montana. A lot of the car dealerships are under construction, so I'll mention a few here real quick. You've got Bravo Cadillac. It's listed in public documents as a $6 million project.
Wow.
So that's a major one. You've also got the El Paso Subaru dealership, a 30,000 square foot project going on Airway that you can see as you're driving down there. Hoy Family Auto Group, a new car dealership they're building near Airway. And then also, I believe the Genesis, at the Hyundai dealership, they're also building a facility for the Genesis.
Yeah. So, I mean, and some other ones going on, including some with a local school district, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. So as you were mentioning, more on the fringes of the city, out in Far East El Paso, you can see off Loop 375, there's a major project with Harmony School of Science is building a large charter school campus out there. And then, of course, there's the road construction all around town.
Oh, yeah.
And some projects being done with the city's public safety bond. There's the big fire station number 36 and the East Side Regional Command Center. I mean, for more details on these, we do have the Crane Watch on our website, but that's a quick overview on some of the latest projects we've highlighted in the paper.
So again, there's again, bright spots might be a good way to put it, even if there are still plenty of challenges, which leads to, if anything, just making it even more of a toss-up on my expectations of what the local or regional economy will do, including, of course, concerns about wages in the area, maybe not keeping up with some of those increasing costs.
Sure, yeah, we were actually able to come up with some numbers on this. I mean, the good news is, wages in El Paso have been stubbornly low. I mean, I don't think it's news to anybody that we trail a lot of other cities in pay here in El Paso. But if you look at a year period from towards the end of 2020, towards the end of last year, wages here in El Paso actually went up nearly 5%. Great news.
Sure.
The downside of that is, of course, inflation. So once you take into account this inflation we've seen, actually, if you look at real wages, they've actually fallen by 1.7% in El Paso.
Okay.
So, we talked to a food service worker who is getting by on essentially minimum wage. He lives with his roommates. And basically his take on this was, even if they raise the wages or raise the minimum wage, it's just going to be the new $7.25 because of the way inflation is eating away at his paycheck. So we may be getting paid more, but the cost of goods is gobbling up most of that increase. And here in El Paso, we actually, in terms of real wages, again, are trailing the nation for wage growth.
I mean, yeah, again, it's been, well, long times put forth that the cost of living and also some businesses coming here focusing on wages that has been attractive to them. So sure, it may lead to more possibilities, but again, raising that base, I mean, every time even since I was in TV, honestly, people saying like, sure, it's a new business, call center, whatever, coming to town, but what are they doing to change the calculation whenever it comes to those kind of, either base minimum wage or those lower above minimum wage, like $10 an hour kind of places. So that conversation still, of course, ongoing. And again, joining us here in studio right now, of course, we do have Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in with us as he does most first Tuesdays of the month here. So already due for that next break of the hour right now. We're going to keep talking with Robbie more about some of those other things going on, including, of course, they're reporting on what's coming up for those August 3rd commemorations, the events going on today and, of course, tomorrow. So stay tuned with more on that, and also some more of the kind of off the wall, including what may be seen as an insect invasion, but not quite a them kind of situation going on in our area. More on that after this break. Here with more Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay tuned for more of all those things that we discussed that affect us here in the Borderland after this break. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 news update. As inflation continues to affect the nation, some animal shelters are now feeling the effects more than ever. El Paso Animal Services adoption rates are down by nearly 60%. Not only are shelters struggling with low adoption rates, but owners are surrendering their pets due to inflation and not being able to afford them anymore. A preliminary investigation in Dallas has determined a man died after he shot a woman. He was killed by the same bullet that he fired, according to police. The Dallas Police Department says 26-year-old Byron Redmond shot the woman in the neck, but the bullet he fired at her exited the woman's neck and somehow hit him in the leg, killing him. The woman was treated and released from the hospital. And a Mexican man has been arrested for reckless driving in connection with a rollover crash that left 2 people dead and 10 others injured last week. The 19-year-old named Julio Garcia Rascon from Juarez was driving an SUV and speeding at about 5 a.m. on July 27th when he struck a utility pole and rolled near the Santa Teresa border with Texas and New Mexico. 2 people were killed. 9 people went to the hospital. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 news update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Still some slow traffic on the I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain down to Red after that earlier crash that blocked a couple of lanes. All lanes are back open there, but there's still some slow and go I-10 eastbound before Red. An accident reported I-10 eastbound at Giles Road and a disabled vehicle. It's a semi that's blocking the right shoulder Gateway West at Yarborough. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We continue to deal with these hot temperatures and very little moisture, but that little moisture can still bring us an isolated shower or storm, at least through about midnight. After that, we should dry out and have a fairly quiet night ahead of us. But we'll do that again, all over again for tomorrow, with another chance for some more showers and storms and yet another hot day in the Borderland. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your very latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Country music star John Rich just released a new single called Progress, where he calls out woke ideology. Don't miss John Rich and don't miss The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday, every Thursday, and all throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Staples has everything you need for school at prices that won't hold you back. Right now, Crayola 24-count crayons and 4-ounce Elmer's glue are just 50 cents each, plus 1-inch binders are only $1.99. In-store only, offer ends 8/26, limit 30. Don't send your kids back to school, send them forward at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we're continuing to talk about here, including development and some responses coming about that right now. John B. Hogan saying we need an upgrade to our electric services, especially in the Far East. And John Braslin responding to that with pedal harder. I really hope that's not our electrical expansion plan. I don't think it is, but in any case, we continue discussing some of those things affecting us here in the region. Again, joined by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in with us as we do most first Tuesdays of the month. So thank you for sticking around with us here for the next segment.
Glad to be here.
So some of the stuff that we got coming up for you here, John, let us know maybe a double audio issue. Let us know if that's still happening for you, because it shouldn't be. In any case, some of the things that we're talking about here, of course, this week and what we are dealing with, as we are approaching that third anniversary of the Walmart attacks of August 3rd, particularly important and, well, touchy week for a lot in the Borderland. Of course, you all have some of the reporting going on of the events, commemorations, and things going on for, well, this week.
Yeah, and this is a difficult week for many El Pasoans. So I think before we get into talking a bit about the various tributes and remembrances that are happening this week, probably worth pausing a moment to talk a little bit about mental health.
Of course.
Are you familiar with the idea of traumaversaries?
Traumaversaries. Yeah, I am, but it's worth explaining, yes.
So, the date of past traumatic events can bring up feelings even years later.
Mm-hmm.
So on the anniversary of traumatic events, it's worth just being aware of the concept that if we're feeling a little more edgy this week, or a little more anxious or depressed or whatever it might be, that's perfectly common with traumatic events that we many of us experienced 3 years ago on August 3rd.
And it's often put as essentially the body has its own memory here. And why, it doesn't have to be something as huge as this. Personal events that have affected you to enough of a degree can often come up like this, such as, well, other anniversaries, times of year when things may have happened, or the absence of certain people are noted, those kind of things. So absolutely makes quite the level of sense here.
Many of those things might be invisible to us. Anxiety, depression, PTSD. So I'm trying to go through this week with a little more patience, a little more empathy for my fellow El Pasoans. It's a difficult week.
It is, absolutely. So some of those events that have been coming up here, some already having gone on, including this morning, a city council meeting, the tolling of a memorial bell for all of the victims there. And more also coming up here, even going on, it was a little bit earlier today as well, the blood drive at City Council. Some of the things going on, including San Jacinto Plaza, healing meditation sessions, and a lot more going on like that you all are reporting on.
Yeah, so to highlight a few here, there's an exhibit, Resilience, Remembering August 3rd at the El Paso Museum of History. There's also remembrance events with luminarias at Ponder Park, Scaredy Park, Wednesday evening. The El Paso Chamber will flash the Star on the Mountain 23 times for each victim, starting at, I believe, 8:30 tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
El Pasoans are encouraged to light their front yards, porches, windows with candles, luminarias, or other lights starting at 8 p.m. tomorrow. And then one other, event I would highlight here is on Saturday. State Senator Cesar Blanco and State Rep Claudia Ordez Perez are hosting a blood drive in memory of the victims at 3 locations across El Paso.
Right, and also things such as, the Luminarias, the many different memorials and commemorations that will be going on for this week. So, as we have often talked about on this program, with the many things that are going on in the hustle bustle of the day, it can often be easy to lose sight of such things. But just remember to give yourself and maybe those around you a little bit extra measure of grace here this week, as there are quite a lot of things going on there. So, John, let us know there's a bad echo happening over on the social media. Try to track that down here. It doesn't seem to be coming through on our end. Maybe try restarting there. But of course, these remembrances are important, and it's important for people to do what makes sense for them in remembering these things or taking part in them or doing their own personal commemorations. But then, of course, there's a lot more going on in the region. Again, the industrial developments and the issues coming with it. Maria Coleman commenting on some of the wages and the issues we have in the area and the things that it causes here. But also, there have been other interesting events that you all have been delving into, including when it comes to, again, that, I guess, slightly on the lighter side, not exactly, again, the movie Them, the old kind of straight from pulp pages kind of movie with the giant ants. We've been seeing some very large, moths, bird-looking things that people may have noticed in their gardens.
So some stories we do are very serious. Some are kind of fun and on the lighter side. But fuzzy flying visitors have been causing El Pasoans to pull out their smartphone cameras and ask, "What is that?" And they have 3-inch wingspans, and they've been darting from flower to flower in our garden.
Okay. And so I've seen those. I was down at actually the Keystone Gardens area recently, and they were quite a bit everywhere. Now, this was during an evening and times when it made sense for them to be able to. People have noticed them. Y'all did some digging into that, including talking with an entomologist.
Yes, we wanted answers, so we reached out to the expert. We reached out to an entomologist at NMSU, and the moths are not uncommon. Folks may have seen them other years, but this year there are many of them, and they are called hummingbird moths, or more technically, the white-lined sphinx moth. Because if you've seen them, they look like a hummingbird. They hover over the flowers. They're sucking the nectar. And at first, you might think they're a hummingbird, but they're not. They're a large moth.
Very large. To the point where, not to get too technical on it, but you can actually see the proboscis on these things as they act kind of like hummingbirds do, just with the proboscis, this long curling thing. I got a chance to see one more or less right in front of me. I should have had my camera out because it was a great demonstration of how they work. But instead of the beak, they have this long curling, they stick it in the flowers and drink the nectar.
And the caterpillars they come from are no less striking.
Really?
You may have seen them. There were a lot of them, and that's why there's so many of the moths now. They're bright yellow, large caterpillars with like the spine off the back. But we asked the entomologist, why are there so many of these moths this year? And what he told us is the reason is for it's the caterpillar boom that we had, and the reason for that was last year's especially wet, rainy season and the abundance of evening primroses, which is the moth's host plant. So we had a very wet, rainy season last year. Many of these evening primroses, a lot of these caterpillars, and now, of course, they turn into moths. Butterflies are moths, and that's why we have many of them flying around, and that's why they're invading your Instagram feed as El Pasoans take all sorts of videos and pictures.
Absolutely. So, the question remains for me then: if this rainy season, not quite on the order of magnitude we had last year, but it's been, this monsoon season has certainly borne out by the name here. So I'll be curious to see if we end up with a similar thing for next year.
Well, what the entomologist told us is can't really predict that. Hard to say. But one important thing is, while they may look kind of alarming, they're kind of large. They are harmless. And, we think of pollinators. We think of honeybees usually. But moths are one of the most important nighttime pollinators. So once evening goes down, once the bees finish their thing, the moths come out, and while we're all asleep, they're going from flower to flower, pollinating all the important crops that we need.
So appreciate them if you want. Otherwise, maybe take a picture of them here. And just one final, just kind of community significant thing here I wanted to mention, not related to any of the other topics we've really been talking about, but an El Paso icon, Maynard Haddad, did pass away last week, actually, a longtime owner and operator of H&H Car Wash that, of course, will round down on its own, closing it, saying it was time at the time. And so just a notable passing in our community.
Yeah, H&H Car Wash and coffee shop was an institution.
Mhm.
I mean, and it was just there was such a mixture of people there from all stratas of life.
That's true.
I mean, it wasn't uncommon to see members of the Bush family there. It was a favorite of George W. Bush. Even ZZ Top's Billy Gibbons commented about H&H Car Wash. It was statewide. Texas Monthly has done stories about it. Just sort of an institution here. And Haddad ran the restaurant and car wash for 63 years before he retired. I think, what was it, a couple years ago, a few years ago?
Yeah, again, recently-ish, and again, with it then itself closing down in July of 2021. Again, significant enough of an interesting and very iconic figure in the El Paso landscape here. Again, we've been talking right now with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in with him as we do the most starts of the month here anyway. So thank you very much for talking to us about some of the big and important reporting y'all are working on around here and what people can find in that latest issue.
Great to be here. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you very much here. So we're going to go ahead and hit that next break and open up the phone lines as we do during this point during the program. So if you want to chime in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We'll be back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Giles. The Giles exit is closed due to a crash there and a little bit of a backup back to Viscount on the eastbound I-10 right now. Border Highway eastbound at Fonseca, disabled truck blocking the right shoulder. I-10 eastbound still a little slow from Arcraft to Red from an earlier crash. And Zaragoza north of North Loop and El Paso fire on the scene of an injury crash there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Country music star John Rich just released a new single called Progress, where he calls out woke ideology. Don't miss John Rich and don't miss The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday, every Thursday, and all throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Well, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Clown Parade is an anthology comedy podcast series presented by Will Ferrell, Bowen Yang, and Matt Rogers. Each month, hear a fresh comedic talent create a brand new podcast format hosted by an original character of their own creation in the spirit of the Ron Burgundy podcast.
What I want you guys to produce are multiple podcasts. It's one podcast called Clown Parade, a anthological character piece carefully curated by culturistas.
Listen to Clown Parade on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer. That's your regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is the leading cancer killer, but can be prevented with regular screenings starting at age 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today and visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
Staples has everything you need for school at prices that won't hold you back. Right now, Staples one-subject notebooks are just 35 cents each. Plus, select backpacks are 50% off. Backpack offer ends 8/6. Notebook offer ends 8/27. Limit 30. Don't send your kids back to school. Send them forward at Staples.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk, are the ways that you can find us. And if you've got any concerns about how you're getting at us, or you can comment. That's one of the reasons we put out all those ways here. The Facebook may not be cooperating that much today. John Brazelton let us know there might be some issues, but also a whole lot more focus on their RJ on the whole caterpillar thing there. They take away beef for global climate change. You might want to round up them caterpillars. Maybe start a caterpillar sauce biz on the side here. As much as there is talk about eating bugs, and like, sure, I might not be opposed to the occasional chapulinas or so. You're probably going to have issues with that whole plan. So let me know if it works out for you, RJ, here. And John, let us know if that sound is working better now. Made some adjustments on this end, seeing what we can do. Falcon saying great food in H&H. I only ever got to go there once, just because not usually my usual stomping grounds, but made the point of it well before the shutdown ended up happening. And yeah, it was definitely pretty good there. Maria Coleman, a little bit further on what she was saying about the wages issues. El Paso wages are some of the state's lowest, but we consistently have nearly the highest property taxes in Texas. How do officials reason residents will be able to continue paying increases yearly, or is it just indifference to our plight? And one of the previous ones of hers that I have to make sure we popped it up on screen, which is one of the reasons it's a good idea to watch over on our social media. But she said, my house continues to be an ATM, would be easier to tolerate if there were services provided. Yeah, a level of concern comes with all of that here. I definitely am feeling a little bit, like a reverse cash machine myself lately as we look at this potential next year's taxes, having done that recent acquisition before this recent rate increase, technically before the previous one. Now that I think about it, still kind of hurts is what I'm saying, particularly since I had to spend a good half hour on the phone by my reckoning, having to go through and deal with the initial mortgage payments. Yeah, just the super fun stuff that makes, of course, great radio topics. So we'll move on from there. Again, if you want to chime in on the many topics we are discussing here today, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, including some discussion about the taxes. John Brazelton bringing up the idea earlier of all taxing agencies need to be able to raise only by a certain percentage jointly. As it is now, each taxing authority can individually raise taxes without considering what others are doing. Let's pass a Proposition 13 in Texas, the one that he's kind of been stumping for, the idea of having it be limits. There are, jointly, no, that is not in place, but the idea of there being this movement or this limit to what it is, something that's actually been put in place by the Texas legislature, among other things, because, well, there are considerations whenever it comes to that, and trying the audio there, let us know if that helps at all, why it's doing that. No idea, but if anyone else has any clear audio on their end, just let us know. In any case, so the suggestion there about limiting how much it can be raised, that has been put into place. That's why, among other things, at least from the county's perspective, because I know that being more directly dealt with by Texas, they are looking at, they have the rollback rate, meaning that there's only a certain percentage, about 5% over any year-over-year increased revenue, by which if they go over that amount, they are then forced to put it on the ballot. So it's not truly a limit, but it's effectively a limit, meaning that if they, raise it over that, it goes to the ballot, and unless they have a damn good reason, I would fully expect that not to be put forth. Because, seriously, you're putting taxes on the ballot. What do you think people are going to do? They are probably going to say pound sand, to put it delicately. particularly given the recent environment and the concerns with the economy and all of that, which is why it's probably a smart thing on the part of the city to be, again, as one of the initial ones looking at rates, at the very least makes them look good in comparison, maybe, by actually making it that they are lowering rates, even if they probably should have put it percentage-wise. But, yeah, again, your mileage may vary depending on how much you went up. This, roughly, again, let's just call it 5 cents over time. What they're looking at the change there being lowered for you when you're within the city limits may or may not work better for you. Okay, John, let us know the audio is better. We're fighting with the tubes and got the monkeys in the back, messing with the typewriters and the pipes as best we can here. So maybe we'll try a little bit of digital percussive maintenance there. So if anyone else is having problems, be sure to let us know over on the social media. Otherwise, again, we do have that phone line open. Again, the number to call there if you wanted to get on the line is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. All right, we'll see what we can do during the break here to deal with those audio issues, because I've checked everything about that I can on this end. Again, the best recommendation I can give you is try restarting your browser or however you're listening to it, because, I don't know, it sounds fine on this end and going out over the radio. I know that's unsatisfying, but there's only so much we can do while flying the ship and then also fixing it. Anyway, on the topics, we're discussing a lot of things here today, including, of course, some of those August 3rd commemorations. That Chloe letting us know does sound good over on the radio. Appreciate that. Because, again, I can kind of hear it, but not quite from where we're sitting as we are broadcasting it. But the topics we're discussing today, again, tax rates, UMC doing more on its outreach in order to, try to convince people that this is a good plan. Again, then looking at that $345 million roughly in certificates of obligation that, at least as currently planned, would not go before voters for approval. But then again, a lot of those conversations going on, as well as even some more updates that we'll probably get into here in the second hour on what is going on with the August 3rd, the indicted shooter, their case, even as there are more legal questions coming for some of those Border Patrol pursuits, among other things. So, tell you what, that's going to take us through that break right now for the bottom of the hour. So if you're on the line, stay there. Otherwise, if you want to chime in over there, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. A lot of those comments and concerns we will continue to get to in the second hour of the program. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break and the top of the hour news here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host. Okay, John says maybe it was him. Okay, good to know. In any case, we'll still be here after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Giles, all lanes are opening back up from an earlier crash that had the exit closed there at I-10 eastbound at Giles. On Zaragoza, north of North Loop, an injury accident with El Paso Fire on the scene. I-10 westbound at Schuster, the right lane is closed for road work to Executive Center Boulevard, and South Desert Boulevard is still closed from Trans Mountain to Artcraft for road work. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690 KTSM.
An iHeart
News
radio
on
station.
The hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says there's no reason why House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip should prompt a crisis between the U.S. and China.
The Speaker's visit is totally consistent with our long-standing One China policy. We've been very clear that nothing has changed about our One China policy.
The White House was reportedly concerned about the trip due to the prospect it may ratchet up tensions with China. Kirby noted that Biden recently spoke with Chinese President Xi by phone for a couple of hours. Beijing considers the independently governed Taiwan to be part of China. President Biden is still testing positive for COVID, and his cough has returned. That's according to the latest update from his doctor. Despite that, Dr. Kevin O'Connor said Biden continues to feel well. He added the president's lungs are clear. Key races and an abortion question top ballots across the country today as voters in 5 states head to the polls. Kansas will be the first state in the nation to vote on abortion access after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Voters will decide whether to strip abortion rights from the state constitution. More interest rate hikes could be on the table as inflation soars.
Speaking to CNBC, San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly noted Americans are still dealing with the effects of high prices. She explained the Fed's job is far from done because things that were affordable 6 months ago aren't now. Meantime, the Chicago Fed president is hoping another big rate hike doesn't have to happen. The Fed has been raising interest rates over the last few months in a bid to tame soaring inflation. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Reports say the top secret U.S. missile used to kill the leader of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan is somewhat gruesome. The Wall Street Journal says the Hellfire missile has no explosives, but is equipped with 6 metal swords that are sharp enough to slice through concrete and steel. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The team for South Carolina's senior senator continues to fight the possibility of him testifying to a Georgia grand jury.
Senator Lindsey Graham continuing to mount a challenge to a subpoena in Fulton County, Georgia. The Republican had previously been called to testify before a special grand jury over the fallout from the 2020 election when former President Trump allegedly tried to find votes to win the state. Graham's lawyers are seeking to have his appearance and testimony thrown out based on what they call absolute protection under the U.S. Constitution. Scott Kimbler.
The Justice Department is suing Idaho over the state's anti-abortion law. Attorney General Merrick Garland told reporters the law doesn't allow exceptions in cases where a woman's health is jeopardized. The U.S. Supreme Court recently overturned Roe v. Wade and left abortion up to individual states. New York City is rebranding its Test and Trace Corps as the coronavirus evolves. Natalie Migliori has more.
The program, first launched at the beginning of the pandemic to conduct contact tracing, is now being dubbed the Test and Treat Corps. The city will deploy 30 mobile units to bring rapid tests and treatment to New Yorkers, especially those experiencing homelessness. People could take a rapid COVID test and have immediate access to Paxlovid if they test positive for the virus. NYC Test and Treat Corps has distributed tests at some 1,200 locations and deployed more than 30 of the nation's first test-to-treat mobile units.
4 Kentucky men are putting their way into the record books. Cole Hetzel, Chris Hetzel, Tony Centers, and Bob Schottinger just broke a Guinness World Record Monday after playing 2,097 holes of miniature golf in 24 hours. They surpassed the previous record of 1,440 holes set by a German team in 2005. The effort was a fundraiser for disaster relief after devastating flooding in eastern Kentucky. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
September 23rd and 24th.
T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas. Stream it free on the CW app and CWTV.com. And get ready to win your way there starting Monday.
the iHeartRadio Music Festival is connecting all of us.
Brought to you by the CW's new hit series, All American Homecoming. Stream every episode now for free, only on the CW app.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Fall into autumn hiring with Indeed. Their all-in-one solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Sponsor a job and immediately get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org. M1EP.com. Superior multifamily property management services citywide.
This is Alec Baldwin. I'd like to invite you to listen to my new limited series podcast about a true American hero who lived to tell the story of his imprisonment by the Japanese during World War II.
I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm a survivor. I wouldn't want to go back through it, but I wouldn't trade it either. It changed my life completely.
Listen to Ben Steele American on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuned in and chiming in over there, including John Browselton, RJ, Ed Clore, Maria Coleman, I know I'm missing someone else there, John B. Hogan, Marky Mandingo, a lot of conversation, John Hertz a little bit earlier, as well as Steve Ivey, also dropping those likes and reacts we do appreciate, such as Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, Robert Haynes, Ed Clore, Marky Mandingo, John B. Hogan, Ione Grimm, and Calvin Williams, and yes, I do read emails, take that as forever proof here, not to make too fine a point of it here, but yeah, if you send me something, I'm liable to at least be able to read it if I don't get back to all of them, as well as also one more Steve Ivey. So we appreciate the likes and reactions. It helps us with all those algorithmic things as we continue our mission to have live local talk radio here in the Borderland. So getting further into, in the second hour here, some more of the, comments and calls and such here, including RJ saying, remember in the 80s and 90s, if the bond improved El Paso quality of life and raised taxes, it got defeated. I mean, there's been more than a little bit of contention, particularly in the aftermath of that 2012 quality of life bond. And, there have been some notable bond defeats, at least most recently. The one I'm thinking of for the Canutillo Independent School District, even if that one may have a potential future onto it. Something's been coming on that. But in any case, we do have those calls on the line. So if you're wanting to call in and chime in there, if you call in the middle of a segment, you might get put on hold there briefly. But in any case, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Jeff in Far East with us on the line here right now. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. A couple comments for you. One, as far as the bond issue thing, you mentioned the quality of life one. I wasn't around during the 80s, and apparently the people voted that one down. But since I've been living here, which has been long enough, just about every bond that I've seen come up gets passed, and the people are basically voting for their home taxes to be raised. So the comment about, it's got to go on the ballot, these different school districts and or politicians, they know how to word things to either deceive the voters, or the voters just aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer. And either way, there's a lot of them. I mean, I mean, you just look at, like, for example, the El Paso School District one that passed a few years back, $750 million to rebuild basically one school. You know, yes, they did a few other things with it, but you look at the fact that it was primarily all about Coronado High School. And of course, they're over budget. They're also out of time frame. And what do you got? You know, there's plenty of issues of going on around here, misappropriation of funds. You hear that going on all the time. So just putting it on the ballot, you know, I think the El Pasoans, I mean, I hate saying it because I'm an El Pasoan. I'm a current voter. But I at least read through all this stuff so in detail that I believe I'm voting, you know, I'm not voting to see our what do you call it? Our taxes going up.
Right.
But apparently others see it as, oh, this is great. And then they complain because what's actually taking place with the money actually is not. So, you know, I mean, the same thing goes even with the ballpark downtown. The people of El Paso actually got that one right, voted against it. But the deceptive politicians, what do we have now? We got a ballpark downtown that we didn't want. So, you know, I kind of feel that putting it on the ballot isn't going to change anything in El Paso. Nothing. And then the other comment I have for you, as far as like with your audio problem that's going on, you got a hot mic somewhere in the studio. You could hear you during the commercial.
Yeah, I usually don't talk during the commercial. That was entirely my error here. So slightly different issue than what John was having. But yes, I got a subtle message saying, were you meaning to talk during the commercial break? That was my error. So let's just say we're more transparent than usual today, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, we'll talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much for the point in the call. You have a good one there, too. I mean, if you want to get on the line as well, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. John Browson on that issue saying too many renters vote. They don't pay the taxes. And yet, maybe not directly, but you bet your Bunuelos they're paying the taxes. It may not be something that they directly see on it there, and therefore they may not consider it, but you're going to tell me that there's any landlord out there who is, particularly any of the, big complexes, the corporate enterprises that they are, that aren't immediately passing on that increase to them unless we got serious long-standing contracts. I mean, if you're locked in for a rate for 10 years, honestly, as a renter, that might be a good deal. But otherwise, I mean, these things get renewed and come up, and there are increases to them. And oftentimes, sure, may get talked about in terms of, well, just costs have gone up, so it has to go up for you. But the taxes are absolute. Like, I would be floored if there is any major landlord in the area that is not saying taxes went up, therefore your rent is going up. So sure, they may not get directly billed for it, but if anything, if they don't think that they're getting and paying some of these taxes, that is a serious problem on their parts. RJ saying, the tax was passed on, and that's a fact. I mean, totally. So if any renter out there is having this idea that they don't get taxed, they don't have to deal with property taxes, allow me to dissuade you of that opinion, because it is by no means a fact. It is an opinion, and one that you are very, very likely wrong about, unless you've got just this real unicorn rental situation, in which case, let me know. I'd love to hit up that landlord myself here. Fact of the matter is, any enterprise, when there are increases in cost, tends to get passed on to the end user. So if you don't think that you're taking that hit, I don't even know how to start that conversation if we're just in that complete lack of recognition of reality. And so some of the other things that were coming up here. And so, okay, just on that idea then of it going onto the ballot here. So I need to maybe do a little bit further research on it, because I'm seeing some conflicting numbers, because I thought it was about 5%. Some of the other resources I'm finding online saying it's about 3.5%. And apparently it used to be in previous eras of Texas governance that it would have to be a petition put on. But so to my understanding, if this number is right, I'll confirm it here probably on the next show once I get a chance to really dig into it, that any amount for a local government, except for like some like local water districts, that kind of a thing, that would raise more revenue than last year by 3.5% would automatically go onto the ballot. And as much as, there has been a propensity on some of the recent big issues, like, the gosh, what was the overall calculation? I think it came out to close to like $700 million across multiple bonds going on in our area, particularly just from school districts. Sure, a lot of those ended up getting approved. I'm going to draw a distinction between actual bond and bond election efforts. And when it comes to just your run-of-the-mill, regular taxes, the ones, the operations, M&O, those kind of things for your local governments, because bonds, I mean, they don't come up every year. Often there is one in place every year. There's a finer point to debate here, but they're not always on the ballot. You're not voting on a bond in your particular, neck of the woods, whatever school district you're in, et cetera, every single year. And that's, kind of the formulation of it now, isn't it? Because what comes along with a bond is a very much a outreach and education and advertising effort that comes along with it. I mean, you cannot tell me of a bond that has happened here recently that did not have one hell of an advertising campaign go along with it, because that's what they have to do. They have to convince you directly, the voter, that it is in your best interest, even if there are those that say, well, I never want to get taxes, or those on the other side that say that, well, I love having more stuff. Yes, whatever you want. Often I think more people fall in between them. And Ted Core is saying that, yeah, taxes are usually a hidden cost for renters, but I mean, honestly, if you're that uninformed about what you're actually paying for, I don't even know what to begin to tell you here. You need to get educated is what I would tell that person. But I mean, yeah, the fact that people, and also the whole conversation about the tax rate and the fact that it only dropped a few cents and people not getting that. Okay, yeah, maybe there's more of a public education issue that we need to deal with. I will freely agree with that. Point is that when it comes to the idea of it actually going on to the ballot, yes, bond efforts, of course, do go through there. And there may be a lot of people that don't consider it, but also there's a lot of outreach with it. If they were having to do this every year because they are bringing in that much more revenue, again, that I think it's the 3.5% every year, and just said, yeah, that's just what your taxes cost. Pay it, or you don't get to have trash pickup anymore. I doubt they would say that, but just as an example here, that probably wouldn't go over well. So the outreach, the effort that goes with it, I think is a significant point of it, and why, again, it has been essentially a takeover well. I mean, it's been a limit that has been put into place very well, I do think here. So tell you what, we're due for that next break here, more than a little bit here after this. And a lot more coming up with it. And we got to take that break, and we'll get onto the phone lines, more of the comments, more all the stuff we do here at this point during the program. So if you're wanting to call in, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. If you're on the line, stay on there for a minute. Take someone a minute to get on the line there with you. But otherwise, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here at News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Memorial Highway 375 northbound after Rojas Drive at Paseo del Este, semi is blocking the center lane. I-10 eastbound at Giles, that accident is cleared, and the Giles exit ramp is back open. A disabled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder, I-10 eastbound at the Patriot. A crash reported, Montwood Drive eastbound at George Dieter. Take Pebble Hills or Traywood instead. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Country music star John Rich just released a new single called Progress, where he calls out woke ideology. Don't miss John Rich, and don't miss The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday, every Thursday, and all throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
rewire the hull?
They're firing, Paul.
Wait, what did I do? Or even,
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
Be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer. Regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
This radio commercial was made to convince you to stop speeding. We can't use siren sound effects on the radio, so we'll use other equally jarring sound effects to get your attention. Like telling you that whether you drive a little over the speed limit or a lot, you can crash just the same. You could hurt yourself or worse, others.
I'm at the scene of the collision.
And the damage you cause will be beyond repair. See, we didn't have to use crash or siren sounds after all. Speeding catches up with you. Brought to you by NHTSA.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working. Who, me? Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. If you're wanting to tune in, chime in with us any of those ways. Of course, we got a lot of comments coming in on those platforms, but of course, we have that phone line open right now. If you're wanting to get on that way, just know if you get on the line, might be a second. As long as you can hear us, you're in the right place, even if someone doesn't pick up here. Call on breaks, we'll get with you. In any case, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. If I had to say what is the difference between those that get on the air and don't, there's no special list. There's no club you got to be a member of. It's mostly tenacity. I got to say, those willing to wait the minute that it takes us to get through some of these discussions and some of the points we get to. So again, if you wanted to add your 2 cents, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM is the number to call here. A lot of issues and consideration going on in our area. And at least one of the points that got brought up to me and points being made there, along with some other comments coming in, including RJ saying that when it comes to rental properties, that they estimate future maintenance and pass on as much of it as they can, and everything else they can get out of you. I mean, ultimately, renting of properties is absolutely a money-making endeavor. Again, unless you got one of those unicorn situations, in which case, would love to know why and how I could get on it. In any case, yeah, it's going to be passed along to you. And again, anyone that is not understanding that, I say home ec needs to come back, is all I'm saying. The idea of actually understanding it, like, sure, balancing a checkbook isn't really a thing anymore since it's all in apps anyway, but like learning just basic, very basic boo-boo kind of ways that taxes and important things deal with you. Yeah, we need more of that to come back. In any case, if you want to chime in over there, again, social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, as we have a lot of people doing there, including, I think we got the full list over here. That'll come up eventually here. A lot more people tuning in and chiming in the many ways that we have available, as well as, again, that phone number, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. 2 things that I wanted to get an update on. I know there's been at least one other things coming out, including from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, as there have been additional, from the driver being found and prosecuted, as well as the 2 that were killed in that high-speed chase that Border Patrol apparently was involved in, but ended up being that a van full of people that left, again, 2 people dead and 10 others injured. As much as the ACLU is questioning Border Patrol pursuits, I'm also aware that there are situations where essentially it's broken off of. But one thing that has struck me in that story, and as well as some of the other issues going on statewide, includes the fact that it was noted in the Uvalde situation, including from some of the reports that, again, local legislators had handed, including, of course, Joe Moody, Texas state rep and co-chair of the Texas House side legislative committee on the Uvalde investigation and all of that, it was noted that yes, there were some like warning systems, text messages, alert systems, etc., in place for the, of course, school district that Robb Elementary is in, but that it was often disregarded in a lot of ways because of too many notifications that came out of, I believe the term was bailouts, happening with events, essentially vehicles that were coming through the area. I mean, it's not exactly an unknown factor, even in our area, that whole sector of the Texas-Mexico border, as it is close to places like Del Rio, Eagle Pass, and some of those hotbeds of activity that we've been talking about. The bailouts are where a vehicle coming across, either on the event of beginning to get stopped or just reaching a certain point, will then ditch the vehicle and everyone scatter out of it. That has happened apparently so often in that area that people were disregarding some of those updates and alerts. I can only take it probably as much as the way I have had to finally turn off the Amber Alerts on my phone. Not an easy decision for me, I gotta say, because as much as I definitely want to know about the chance to help save a child kidnapped in our area, it never ended up being in our area. Like when it's calling in from Beaumont, Texas, that this is happening, and it's 2 a.m., I can only take so many of those before I start to disregard them. As awful as that sounds, I will freely admit it, because that's just the situation it was in. So I can't exactly blame the people involved in that situation, even if there were some, increasing incidents going on with it. So as much as there may be the ACLU wanting to question that and looking for investigation after that rollover, well, maybe we'll have some further conversations, because I would love to see more about this and what it is and what the real situations are going on with that. But as we are, of course, on the anniversary of the August 3rd, third year anniversary, I should say, Flago Menace saying that running from a law enforcement officer is not a civil liberty. Yeah, that's particularly if there are, light sirens, all that kind of thing going on. I guess I will draw a distinction between civil liberty, whether it's a right you have or not, and also then what makes good sense and what makes, has the best interest of public safety in it, which is why looking into what the actual rates and what the actual response is policy-wise, those kind of things, will also be something we'll need to look into a little bit further as we continue that conversation. But again, as we are, of course, on the cusp of the August 3rd anniversary, third anniversary in this case, it has been noted, and we mentioned a little bit yesterday, that there has been more action going on with the case, including some more motions being filed, as well as being reported on by El Paso Matters, among others. The El Paso DA hires new attorneys to assist with that case. Again, with the indicted shooter filing a handful of motions at the end of last week and adding 2 new state prosecutors onto the case, both of whom were brought in from out of town, as El Paso Matters notes. Monica Baron Auger and Adez Ada Naweri, if I'm pronouncing that right, who previously worked in the Rio Grande Valley and West Texas, respectively, joining Assistant District Attorneys John Briggs, Michelle Hill, and Haben Mohammed, who are already working on the case. And, well, a lot of the things that were said by the 409th District Judge Sam Medrano on that issue, calling it the plan to hire out-of-town attorneys on this, one of the worst-kept secrets in town. So happy to see there's progression on this and more filings, as that had been brought up. But, of course, in this case, we can't really address the district attorney on these directly, because, unfortunately, we do not have the ability to do so, as a gag order has been put into place here. So, again, if we're having phone line issues, someone let me know out there, because we keep getting people call in and then drop off before I can even put them on the line. Again, if you're wanting to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. RJ commiserating with me a little bit here. I do appreciate that, saying they need to regionalize Amber Alerts and not just limit to the state. Have they seen a map of Texas? The fact that we're in another damn time zone should probably be a just a little bit of a clue to them. We are literally in a different set of space and time than the rest of the damn state. I'm getting a little bit worked up about this. I know it's a soapbox issue, but seriously, the amount of, even people outside of town, just as an anecdotal reminder, I remember when things like Hurricane Katrina were coming through, or Ike, or any of those, we would occasionally get calls from out-of-state families saying, oh man, I heard about that awful hurricane happening in Texas. I know you all live there. Are you all doing all right? And I just try not to be snarky, because I appreciate the concern, but the temptation is to tell them, I need you to go to a map just real quick. Just do it for me, please. Pull it up on your phone. Go to Google Maps, pull out your atlas if you still have one, and I need you to find El Paso on that map for me. And I need you to measure the difference between El Paso and the Gulf of Mexico, and El Paso and, let's just call, the the Baja Gulf or even the Pacific Ocean, because you're going to find the differences maybe a little bit different than you're considering there. Again, I appreciate the concern, but seriously, it's if a hurricane hits El Paso full force and other things, the rest of Texas is probably already underwater, and you would be having a very different level of concern here. Anyway, that's going to take us through this next break. We're going to check what's going on with our phone lines. Again, that phone line is available, as far as we know, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Worked earlier anyway, so if you want to get on the line, that should be the way to do so. Just make sure to stay there for a second until we can pick up with you. Otherwise, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Coming out of this break, a little bit more talk about some of those situations happening here in Texas. So again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. As inflation continues to affect the nation, some animal shelters are now feeling the effects more than ever. El Paso Animal Services adoption rates are down by nearly 60%. Not only are shelters struggling with low adoption rates, but owners are surrendering their pets due to inflation and not being able to afford them anymore. A preliminary investigation in Dallas has determined a man died after he shot a woman. He was killed by the same bullet that he fired, according to police. The Dallas Police Department says 26-year-old Byron Redmond shot the woman in the neck, but the bullet he fired at her exited the woman's neck and somehow hit him in the leg, killing him. The woman was treated and released from the hospital. And a Mexican man has been arrested for reckless driving in connection with a rollover crash that left 2 people dead and 10 others injured last week. The 19-year-old named Julio Garcia Rascon from Juarez was driving an SUV and speeding at about 5 a.m. on July 27th when he struck a utility pole and rolled near the Santa Teresa border with Texas and New Mexico. 2 people were killed, 9 people went to the hospital. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Got a big crash on Memorial Highway northbound after Rojas that is causing a backup, blocking the center and the left lane just north of Rojas at Paseo del Este. A border highway westbound at the 54 Gateway, a vehicle on fire blocking the right lane. I-10 eastbound at Reynolds, a truck is blocking the left shoulder, and there's a stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 between Cotton and Reynolds, 10-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We continue to deal with these hot temperatures and very little moisture, but that little moisture can still bring us an isolated shower or storm, at least through about midnight. After that, we should dry out and have a fairly quiet night ahead of us. But we'll do that again, all over again for tomorrow, with another chance for some more showers and storms and yet another hot day in the borderland. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your very latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Strawberry Frosty. With the Strawberry Frosty, time to enjoy yourself is built in. They're so rich and creamy, they're built for you to slow down, relax, and just take it all in. So when it's time for Frosty time, and Strawberry Frosty time is for a limited time, choose wisely. Choose Wendy's. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Country music star John Rich just released a new single called Progress, where he calls out woke ideology. Don't miss John Rich, and don't miss The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday, every Thursday, and all throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to chime in on the show, particularly during this point in time when there might be some atmospheric disturbances happening out there. At least one person letting me know they're having some issues in reception. So, well, that's why we are out there in all the ways that we are, because even if the atmosphere isn't cooperating, we're definitely with you here on air, online, and live streaming. But, of course, that phone line open available as well, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Again, just a little bit of patience is always asked for, as you'll get put on hold briefly for calling in during a segment. Otherwise, we'll pick up with you during the breaks here. So we do have another call on the line here right now. A lot more comments coming in here as well. RJ, on the subject of rain and effectiveness of the rest of Texas, saying, call me in 2 days when the rain arrives here. Yeah, that's about how it goes. And Sean Gardner chiming in saying 100% agree with you on the Amber Alert issue. Like, I felt bad. I still kind of feel bad in retrospect about it. But, like, what do they expect us to do? Like, not just go out and start heading towards Beaumont or wherever the hell it's coming from? Anyway, yeah, they definitely need to regionalize it, or at least time zone-ize it. Restricted to the time zone, better way to put it. In any case, again, if you want to call in 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Ben, hello, Andrew. I wanted to call in, and I haven't been listening up until about maybe 10 minutes ago. So if somebody's already called about this, I apologize. Mm-hmm. But is anybody angry and concerned that this is the second time that this administration, the Biden administration, has put us in direct path with either world war or possible nuclear war with nuclear opponents?
Not in as so many words as you're talking about there. We got into a little bit yesterday. I think you're referring there, obviously, to the Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, it sounds like.
Yes, but also this is the second time that, basically we're talking about Ukraine and China. And it seems like there's a lot of being said about all the dealings that President Biden and his son, his family, have had with those two entities, Ukraine and China. Mm-hmm. And all the things that have been going on, with the labs in Ukraine, the Wuhan lab, the exchange of monies between the situation, the things that they have been involved in. Don't you think it's time for somebody to, in Congress, to kind of say, hey, we've got a problem here. It may not be able to we may not be able to wait until the 2022 elections. We need to do something about this now. Otherwise, this guy is going to get us into some situation where we can't get out of it.
Whether or not it was a good idea to even formulate the trip, I think is one question that certainly should be able to, speaking specifically about the Taiwan now, but some of the comments already coming on here, RJ saying from one of the things, China respects strength, showing weakness would have been a mistake, big mistake, and James Radcliffe decrying media hype from the trip to Taiwan. Again, I think there's two questions to really, at least in this issue, to be answered, or everyone has to answer for themselves, whether it was a good idea to formulate it in the first place, but then really once the response started happening, would have been a good idea to then say, well, this ticks China off, therefore we're not going to do it, and backing down that way. I think they are, well, both reasonable questions to be answered.
Well, putting us in that situation in the first place was irresponsible. Nancy Pelosi, I can't, I don't know. It seems like, she's not the one that's supposed to be, designating foreign policy for the United States. It's supposed to be the president of the United States. And so if she went off on her own without, consulting with the Biden administration, then she should be looked into as a possible problem. So, there's these people never think about what happens if you do this, then what? Again, then what? They went into Ukraine in a situation where, a foe that was as equal, if not more superior, in because of the amount of the fertilizer and the oil, and gas that Russia had, and everything. They put in a situation where that was a no-win situation. And if China decided, sure, there's very little, maybe a little possibility, but are you really willing to take that chance? For what? So she can go over there and rattle swords? And if it's not her, if she's been directed by the Biden administration, then they've rattled swords for what? For what purpose?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure whether I totally believe this is a coordinated thing or complete discoordination. Or maybe just a left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing, given that, some of the other circumstances going on, even just this or recent week anyway, the 2-hour or so phone conversation between, Chinese head Xi Jinping and President Biden. And then, of course, this visit. I think that it would have been unreasonable to say that there would have been no response provoked from, Chinese Communist Party by this visit. And yet, as James Radcliffe bringing up here, saying it's all media hype, the trip to Taiwan. There are many congressional members that were just there in the past 6 months, which is absolutely true. And I think among other things, besides the fact of it being a visit by the Speaker of the House, also the fact that it has been very much the Chinese government's response to this that has really put it into the highlight. I first became aware of this when some of the, initial Chinese government responses were happening, even out of the potential of this trip. I can't remember the exact date, but within the last couple of months, let's say, when those initial responses laid out. So sure, to say that there was not expected to be any kind of response, it would be unreasonable. But
the congressmen that went before, they just showed up in Taiwan. They didn't announce a big, huge, saying that they were going to visit Taiwan in advance and make a big show of it and everything. That's what she did. So again, if it's a matter that she did it irresponsibly because she wanted to do it and not at the direction of the Biden administration, then she should be put sanctioned, thrown out of office or whatever for what she has done, because she's not she doesn't direct national policy. And if that's not true, if Nancy Pelosi was not the one that did it, and the Biden administration people in the Biden administration were the one that orchestrated this garbage, then they need to be put on in sanctions and possibly impeachment.
Well, I'm sure
maybe not for Biden, but anybody in the Biden administration who okayed this.
I'm going to be kind of surprised if that happens. Much as you're fever on it, I'll be surprised if any of those particular bits of action, because, as much as there has been maybe consternation in the Biden administration, they pretty much are saying, yeah, this is something they can do, at least their official statements coming out of it. So I'll be surprised if any of that happens. Whether or not after November some of those things could be pushed on, that's slightly a different question, but remains to be seen in any case.
Where are the Republicans? Where are the Republicans objecting to this stuff? That is what I want to know. Are they just playing politics? They want to wait until the elections to have an election, something to say at the elections in order to get put in power? Or do they really care about the United States of America not being destroyed?
Well, I think that's a question that will have to remain. I'm okay. Just to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really sure if there has been much of a response on this. I think it's been a little bit split whether they think it's a good thing or a bad thing, showing strength or not. I don't know. I guess I really haven't seen that much of it on this issue, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything on the conservative media that had much to say about it, except for a congressman that was on Glenn Beck And I think Thomas Massey said something about it. Maybe Ron Johnson. This is a national problem. This is something that needs to be looked at now. I'm sure that people don't want to, have to go to tonight. Go to sleep tonight, and concern themselves that maybe, just maybe, we may have a world war that I'm going to wake up to. And maybe I'm hyperbolous about this, but I don't appreciate it, and I don't think it's what my administration should be doing. The idea is to keep us safe.
I won't disagree with you on that point here, but I think that this conversation will continue on. We'll see if there's any immediate after effects. I know at least some things I've been looking at, maybe recommending that there may not be exactly military action, but supply shocks, maybe some limited things might be happening out of this. But I would say pretty much at this point, the ball is very firmly within the Chinese Communist Party and the government of China's ball court at this point. So appreciate the point in the call.
What would have happened if China, if Nancy Pelosi's plane would have been shot down? Maybe what? Then what? Then what happens?
Yeah,
or something maybe something would have just an accident would have happened while she'd done that and everything. I'm sorry. I don't think the people of the United States deserve this kind of treatment.
Fair enough here. Well, I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, let's try to squeeze in another couple of calls here if we can before the end of the hour. We do have another call on the line here right now. Again, if you're calling in the middle of a segment, you get popped up live, so stay on your toes there. We do have a caller on the line with us live right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Hi, Andrew. It's Barbara on the west side.
Hey there, Barbara. What's on your mind?
Well, I was listening to the gentleman, and I understand his concerns and everything, and I understand his helplessness, how he feels helpless.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the majority of the people in America have felt that way since this administration went into office, because they're not only jeopardizing our safety and security with China, but our open borders. Every policy that the administration has put into place that has slowly but surely deteriorated our country, jeopardized our own sovereignty. So, and he wonders where all the Republicans are. While their hands are tied, we can get on the mountaintop and scream. I'm on the radio every day saying something, but it's like we have to wait. Like they say, vote with your feet. Unfortunately, I wish, and I know a lot of people wish that there was another way to remedy what's going on in Washington right now. But without any Republicans controlling anything, we're at their mercy. Believe it or not, that's how I feel it. We're at the mercy of an administration who doesn't care whether or not the United States is safe and care whether or not the citizens agree or disagree with their policies. But anyway, what I was going to call about today is the figures for the June immigration crisis came out, and they said that it is the worst ever in the history of the DHS recording illegal immigration at our borders. In fiscal year 2021, they stated they've apprehended 144,000 illegal immigrants, and we still have 3 months to go. For June, though, the New York Post wrote that they've apprehended 207,000 illegal immigrants at the border. 83,000 of them, mind you, were outside of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. So they were from countries all over the world. And they say that was a 310% increase from the Trump Junes. And remember, I'm always calling and reminding people that there are 40,000 unaccompanied minors lost in the system.
Right.
Well, in June, they apprehended 15,271 unaccompanied minor children to add to the total. So that's pretty sad. But I constantly say that there's nothing good coming out of our open borders, and especially for the children, and that the Democratic Party doesn't care where they're at and what's happening to them. I don't know if people are aware, but yesterday or the day before, the New York Post reported on child labor at the Hyundai plant in Alabama. There was a 12-year-old, I think they said she was from Guatemala, and then 2 other children, minors, working at a chicken farm, and that they are being investigated. So that's what's happening with the humane agenda at the border that our congresswoman supports. They're now finding child labor in these companies. But when they ask Hyundai, how is it that this is happening? They say, oh, well, we don't know. We go through an employment agency for our employees. And then you go to the employment agency and they don't respond, and the attorney general has no comment. So, we need to take our borders seriously and what's happening to these children and wake up that nothing is good ever going to come out of open borders and thinking that it's okay once they get into the United States of America, because that's not the case. And then what's so sad is now they're not releasing, they're dismissing deportation cases because they're blaming the Border Patrol, which I think is really, really an injustice.
Yeah.
They're saying that the reason they're doing it is because they're not filing the proper documentation, getting the paperwork done. And how can they? They have them as a ambulance service, a shuttle service, a babysitting service. Who has time in a day to get all that work done that they're saying that they need to properly enter the documents into a system if there's, some sort of a complication or disconnection there? They need to wake up. It's their policies why the Border Patrol can't get these in. And then for them to just arbitrarily dismiss the cases, they know that they're the cause of the inaccurate records that they have or incomplete documentation. So I don't know. We need to vote these people out, El Paso. And you need to stay, informed on what's happening at our borders and what they're doing with the Border Patrol and who they're pointing fingers at when they should be pointing them back at themselves.
I mean, what's the phrase they say? You point a finger out and then, 3 point back at you. Though anytime it's said that, well, Border Patrol isn't doing their job, the 2 questions that immediately come to mind are, have they been given the time and the funding and the staffing to do whatever you're telling them to do these days? Because, the name is kind of the mission there, patrol the border. That is, and these spaces in between the ports of entry, literally the reason it exists, and why we make, often delineation between CBP, Customs and Border Protection, and then Border Patrol. Yes, they are part of the same, technically the latter subsidiary to the former, but still, it is, very important to allow them the resources to do the job. And honestly, this is one of those things that you can't fix overnight, because the amount of staffing, that the problems that come with it, you can't just go out and hire people off the corner to be Border Patrol agents. I've actually both done some of those investigations years ago and have had friends who have tried to go through that process, and it is a multi-year process. So if it's not a consistent priority, that starts to show, among other things here. So yeah, then moving that around is weird. Just in answer to the question from previously, if there has been any Republican response here, I just feel the need to mention it here. The Republican senator from Louisiana, John Kennedy, was on Fox News a little bit earlier saying that, quote, if Pelosi really wanted to demonstrate strength, she would have brought Kevin McCarthy, but no, it's her, the Speaker Pelosi show. So I'm almost, dare I say, getting hints of like we should have been included, or wanting there to be more involved with it, as much as there is, quite a lot. At least some of the comments coming in, Mondo over on the Twitch stream saying, I'm a Republican and I object to her visit. Why provoke the Chinese Communist Party here? So I'm sure whatever comes out of this, honestly, the social media has been nuts on that issue. We'll continue talking about it. Tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. So appreciate the point and the call. We'll definitely get further into it, but we got to get to the end of the program here. So getting into that last break right now, we'll break it down for you, what we got coming up for you, tell what we're working on for you, and of course, close out the show. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the border highway westbound to the 54 gateway, it started with a vehicle fire, and now all westbound lanes on the border highway are closed at the 54 gateway. Exit Delta Drive or East Paisano exits to skip the slowing. I-10 eastbound at Cotton, vehicles blocking the exit ramp. I-10 eastbound at Trowbridge, there's a crash reported and a backup, by the way, from Trowbridge back to Cotton, about 10-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Most World War II events have made their way into our history books, but for nearly half a century, the tragedy of the HMT Rona was kept secret. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
This radio commercial was made to convince you to stop speeding. We can't use siren sound effects on the radio, so we'll use other equally jarring sound effects to get your attention. Like telling you that whether you drive a little over the speed limit or a lot, you can crash just the same. You could hurt yourself or worse, others.
I'm at the scene of the collision.
And the damage you cause will be beyond repair. See, we didn't have to use crash or siren sounds after all. Speeding catches up with you. Brought to you by NHTSA.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
I'll never forget the call that my only son had been killed instantly by a distracted driver on her cell phone. Please hang up and drive.
Heads up, Texas. Using your phone behind the wheel can be deadly. Talk, text, crash. Brought to you by TxDOT.
M1EP.com. Superior multifamily property management services citywide.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM as we have been, and as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. That's going to just about do it for us here today. We got a lot more coming up for you, including more talk about some of those crime rates. I know you all been interested in that, working on that for you a little bit later in the week. Also checking in, of course, tomorrow with our news partners at KFOX 14, as we do most Wednesdays, on some of the big reporting going on there. And, of course, some of the August 3rd events. Ever so slightly going to be a focus this week. Should come as no surprise. But in the meantime, a lot more comments have come in there, including it's not that I'm laughing at you, just the concept makes me laugh every time. Calvin Williams said Andrew J. Polk for Congress, which, again, why I didn't know you hated me that much. And then Andrew's ignorant saying he'd be perfect, he's wishy-washy and non-committed. I'll tell you something I am committed to, and it's opposing the nonsense you put up most of the time, but that's by the by. In any case, we'll keep doing it every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. as we do here. So we'll be back with you all tomorrow. In the meantime, be sure to stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Westbound on the border highway at the 54 gateway, a vehicle fire and all westbound lanes closed on the border highway. Back up to Fonseca, you could exit Delta Drive or East Paisano to skip the backup. I-10 westbound at Geronimo, an injury accident. A stall is blocking the exit ramp on the 10 eastbound at Cotton, and an accident reported I-10 eastbound at Trowbridge. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Some big news. Dick Morris's new book came out.
And it says Donald Trump is running for president. And right after that, President Trump said, it's not a matter of if, but when. You need to get Dick Morris's new bestseller, The Return, today. It reveals Trump's long-expected plan for 2024, his real reason for running, and his coming big surprise. Morris says Trump still might face 3 threats, including Hillary Clinton. And yes, Morris says she's running again. Newsmax says The Return is the book of the year. Already a #1 Amazon bestseller, The Return gives you Trump's plan. Big media, big tech, and the deep state want to stop Trump, but The Return shows Trump will triumph. Get Dick Morris's The Return in bookstores everywhere, or see the free offer from Newsmax and save almost $28. Just go to thereturn911.com. Thereturn911.com. That's thereturn911.com.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com. News on the hour and the half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News